Good morning, friends, on this cold Sunday morning. It's wonderful to be with you all. We are in First Corinthians, where we're going to be for a couple of weeks, and this sermon is titled We Are. The body of Christ has many parts. Some we celebrate, often others are overlooked, ignored, or maybe even just tolerated. Yet all have something to offer. Sometimes the people we disagree with or those we find difficult have the most to offer us. Last week we read Isaiah 61 verses 1 through 2. And this week we hear Jesus use the same text from Isaiah to proclaim God's favor. It was a message that people needed to hear. Jesus clarified that his gospel was a call to justice. His was a hopeful message to those who had lost hope, those that they could be open to respond to God's call to justice, so that they could be open to respond to God's call to justice. Do you remember Amanda Gorman? She was the American National Youth Poet Laureate, and she did an inauguration poem. She delivered it in Washington, D.C., and she began with the question, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? Rather than a statement, as Jesus did when quoting Isaiah, Amanda asked a question. She went on to offer hope, peace, and justice in ways not dissimilar to Jesus. In the core of the poem, she offered these thoughts to a hurting nation. If we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy. Her words echo those of our Messiah, for it is not military might, but divine light that lead us forward. God calls us to use the gifts we all bring, for they are the gifts that we have been given by God. Going back to last week's preaching notes and saying ditto would have been a very easy approach for this week's sermon. But I think to preach the same sermon 2 weeks in a row might be a little much. Although I would see who was really listening to me. Certainly, the theme of unity and diversity carries through here as well, so we can do a part 2. Most preachers, understandably, do not find it repeating a message satisfactory. They don't want to say the same thing every week and assume that their congregation members don't either. So how do we approach this text to distinguish it from the previous part of chapter 12 that we read last week? The previous text speaks of all the gifts going together to make up the whole. This text says each gift goes together to make up the whole. A subtle distinction, but to be sure, nonetheless important. Remember, hear what I said, hear it again. The previous speaks of all the gifts going together to make up a whole. This text says each gift goes together to make up the whole. You could think of last week, we were saying the whole matters, unity matters, the body matters. This week we could say you matter to the whole, your gifts to the unity of the body. They matter. You matter is an important and popular message these days, but Paul's emphasis would be you matter because the body of Christ would not be the body of Christ without you, without that gift that you bring, without the person that you are. You are an integral part of the body. The first part of this text could easily be seen as dealing with the inferiority complex many of us have. So many people have imposter syndrome. That's thinking that where you are, you don't really belong, you're not qualified, you're not worthy, someone's going to figure it out and expose you to the world. We might think that our contribution to the whole isn't worth a lot, or that we don't measure up to the leaders of the congregation or the ones up front week after week. I'm just me, some might think. Nothing special, nothing crucial. But that is so far from the truth. Each one of us individually matters to God, and that is an exciting prospect. We look around us and we could see who else might feel that way. Who can we lift up? What task or ministry doesn't get a lot of attention, doesn't seem as dramatic as the others, but nonetheless is very important? What people are we neglecting to say thank you to in the moments of the life of the church because it's so routine, we don't even think about it getting done? Which volunteers are plugging away unremarked, sometimes for years, without proper recognition? Most of these workers we know, especially in the church, they aren't asking for acknowledgement, and they'll probably be embarrassed to receive a thank you. So we want to take care in giving them attention. But helping people find their worth is a valuable and necessary effort. The second approach Paul takes in this text is to deal with those with a superiority complex. Now, a lot of us can have this at the same time as inferiority complex. This is why I find psychology so amazing. Here we aren't coaxing some out of the shadows onto the stage for recognition. Rather, we are attempting to put some into their proper place as a part of the whole. This is a delicate enterprise and isn't advised that we engage in it in a full prophetic fervor, kicking existential ground of beings and taking sorry, that word got me. Kicking existential ground of beings. We want to make sure that we're letting people know we appreciate them, but at the same time, a little humility is a good thing in most settings. Now, there are a variety of ways to approach this topic. We could return to the beginning of the text and talk about the source of gifting. Once we identify our gifts, it can be difficult to remember how we got here, that those gifts are from God. We tend to believe that it is our effort, our worth, our goodness that has caused such things to be in our working. But Paul clearly states that any gift worth the title of spiritual gift has not come from within, but from the Spirit. We are all sourced from the same reservoir. We drink of the same Spirit, Paul tells us. Because of our common origin, because of our gifts' common origin, we can share in mutual support and mutual honor for whatever it is we do within the body of Christ. Another approach within this text is to focus on the interrelatedness of the gifts we use for building up the body. If one member suffers, all suffer together with it. If one member is honored, all rejoice together with it. We are part of a whole, not one above another or one more necessary than the other. We are one. Yet, there is still individuality. You are the body of Christ and individually members of it. Individually members, meaning you are important. You, the individual, you, the person, you matter. But we know that best when we engage in the whole, when we act as part of a community and not just as lone rangers, that it's important. You are the body. And really, I think the best way to hear that phrase is in the true Southern plural. All y'all are the body of Christ. Blessed be.